Welcome back into Tide Talk Live. Stacy Blackwood riding solo. Thank you guys so much for stopping by and watching this episode. If you haven't already, make sure you like, share, and subscribe here on our YouTube channel. If you're listening to us on podcast form, please subscribe there. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go and leave us that 5-star written review. That really helps us out a lot. We are brought to you by the Believe Network and also by betonline.ag, and we'll tell you more about those guys here in just a few moments. Got a jam-packed show. Going to do my best to move through it as quickly as I can. So don't take up a lot of your time, and I don't sound so monotone. But we're going to be talking about the College Football Hall of Fame. We're going to be talking about Joel Klatt's, top 10 games that he's looking forward to in the 2024 college football season. And we'll talk some other ins and outs of Alabama football and maybe even touch on a little basketball before we wrap up this episode. But once again, make sure you do like, share, and subscribe on YouTube here and jump in the comments. Give us a roll tide. Tell us where you're watching us from. We would love to hear from you guys and kind of get an idea of where our fans are from. Before we get down to the nitty gritty, make sure you head on over to betonline.ag. BetOnline is your number one source for the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup this season. Every stat, every matchup, every type of live odd that you can think of, BetOnline is going to have it. They are the best betting online service there is. That's why their name is BetOnline. When the game's over, head on over to the online casino. They have just unlimited amount of casino games over there on their website. So head over there to the website today, sign up. Use promo code BELIEVE, and you will receive 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, the game starts here. All right, guys, I told you we're going to be talking about just kind of a handful of college football topics that kind of are Alabama football related. And there's a lot going around, and we're going to start with Joel Klatt's kind of list of top 10 games for the 2024 college football season. And Alabama is a part of two of those matchups. You can guess one of them that's obvious. It's Georgia at Alabama, which is Alabama's fourth game of the season right after a bye week. So that's a huge game. But we'll start with his other game, which is Missouri at Alabama. And one reason he kind of lists this as a must-watch game, it's really more from the Missouri standpoint. And I kind of like where he went with this. Missouri's schedule really sets up nicely for them this year. And I mean, Alabama is their toughest opponent by far. They don't have to play Georgia. They don't have to play Ole Miss. They don't have to play LSU. They don't have to play Tennessee. So, I mean, they don't have to play Texas. So they get Oklahoma out of the either Texas or Oklahoma scenario. So this schedule really sets up nice for Missouri. Now, they do play at Alabama kind of later in the season. I think it's in October, late October. But the Missouri schedule sets up nicely for them. So you're looking at a team that could be rolling into Bryant-Denny Stadium with a chance to play for an SEC championship, later on in the season. So that's a huge matchup for Alabama. I do like Alabama in that matchup at home. I imagine it's probably going to be a night game with all that's going to be surrounding that contest and that matchup. So a really big game in terms of who could potentially be playing in the SEC championship game when you talk about the Missouri at Alabama game there in late October. But obviously the biggest game of the season for Alabama, one of the biggest games of the season in college football overall is Georgia at Alabama there in late September. And look, Nick Saban's no longer at Alabama, so you kind of lose some of that mystique surrounding the matchup between Kirby Smart and Nick Saban. But look, under Nick Saban, I think Alabama just completely dominated Georgia. I think Alabama was 2-8 or 8-2, excuse me, against the Bulldogs under Nick Saban, and Kirby Smart was just 1-5 against Nick Saban. Now, was that a Nick Saban thing, or was that a Kirby Smart versus Alabama thing? We're going to find out a lot about what Kirby Smart can do against a non-Nick Saban coached Alabama football team really early on in the Kalen DeBoer era of Alabama football. I think this is probably the biggest game of the college football season. I think both teams are going to enter this matchup undefeated. There's a potential there, both inside the top three, maybe even the top two teams in the country, because you're looking at Alabama team who, if they're undefeated, that means they would have went to Wisconsin and won a big time road game against a Power 5 opponent. So this has all the makings to be one of the biggest games of the college football season, and it could go a long way in determining who wins the SEC or who competes for the SEC championship game there in Atlanta. So Alabama's a part of a lot of big matchups this season. I mean, you look at going to Tennessee, going to LSU, going to Oklahoma. The Iron Bowl is always a big matchup. So there's a lot of interesting games coming up for Alabama football this upcoming season. Want to touch on Nick Saban, Mark Ingram, and Chris Samuels being put on the ballot for the 2025 College Football Hall of Fame. Obviously, all three deserve to be in. We'll start with Chris Samuels, a guy who played in the late 90s, one of the first really offensive linemen I remember growing up as an Alabama football fan. Of course, kind of held down that left tackle spot for the Crimson Tide on that 99 SEC championship team, where they beat the Florida Gators twice in the season to be SEC champs, once in Gainesville and then once in Atlanta for the SEC championship. So Chris Samuels, one of the best left tackles in Alabama football history, went on to have an incredible career with the Washington. It was the Redskins at that point in time. Chris Samuels, to me, is a Hall of Famer in all sense of the word, or all sense of the category. He is one of the best offensive linemen in Alabama football history, making him one of the best offensive linemen in college football history. So he's very deserving of being on the, not only on the ballot, but being in the Hall of Fame. Of course, was the left tackle for one of the best running backs in Alabama football history, in Sean Alexander. So very, very deserving for Chris Samuels. Mark Ingram, what are to say? One of the best running backs in Alabama history, first Heisman Trophy winner in Alabama football history. So I think it's a no-brainer that Mark Ingram is a college football Hall of Famer. And then you get to the GOAT, Nick Saban. If he doesn't receive every vote possible, then it's just flat out hate and bigotry, because Nick Saban is the greatest college football coach of all time, without question. 7-time national champion, 6 at Alabama, 1 at LSU. Just an incredible head coach. I don't have to tell you guys that. You witnessed it all. You saw it firsthand. The best coach in college football history, and should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He should be on every Hall of Fame nomination list there is for college football, for any type of football, for any type of team sport. When it comes to coaching, Nick Saban is among the greatest of all time, and I would rank him against anybody in any sport, regardless of the sport, because the way he transcends just college football. What he done for the sport of college football. You see all these changes going on. I'm not saying it's all because of Nick Saban, but it is in large part because of Nick Saban and the domination that he had at Alabama in that 17-year run he had in Tuscaloosa. So great honor for Coach Saban, Chris Samuels, and Mark Ingram. They're all deserving of being in the College Football Hall of Fame, and just really excited I think they're all three going to get in, and they should. I don't know how the whole voting system works for the College Football Hall of Fame. Not going to pretend like I do, but if they're not all three in, then there's something wrong with the College Football Hall of Fame. All right, last thing we're going to touch on from an Alabama football kind of perspective, and I know I'm kind of going through these quick. I just don't want to be, with it being a single host, I don't want to blow through. I don't want to take my time and take up too much of your time. So we're going to look at the ESPN kind of released their first FPI rankings for the 2024 college football season. Just going to go through the top 25 real quick. We'll focus on some SEC teams and kind of where they're at. SMU comes in at number 25. They're projected to go around 8-3 or 8-4, 9-3 on the season. Miami, surprisingly, is number 23. Arizona State was 24. Sorry, I skipped those. Kansas State 22, Louisville 21, Florida is 20th. I don't know about you guys. That's a little surprising for me. After 4-8, 5-7 last year for Billy Napier and the Gators. This is a huge year for Billy Napier and the Gators. They need to win. I think anything less than 8-4, I'm not sure Napier is retained, considering what's going on off the field with Rashada, who's now at Georgia, suing Napier and the Gators. So that is definitely something to look out for. Auburn comes in at number 19. Another team that is looking to gain some momentum under Hugh Freeze entering his second season. Obviously, he's done a really good job on the recruiting trail. Let's see if that can pay off for the Tigers this season. I'm still a little concerned about the quarterback position, Peyton Thorne. I'm not sure he can get it done for those guys, but we'll see what happens. USC at 18, Kansas at 17, Ole Miss number 16 in the FPI. Now, this is a team that is receiving a lot of preseason hype for the college football playoff. And the fact that ESPN has them at 16 in the FPI is a little it's interesting, because you got to obviously be in the top 12 to make the college football playoff. So that's definitely something very, very interesting to look out for. Clemson 15. Of course, they open up with Georgia in Atlanta to start the season. So we'll find out a lot about Clemson in week 1. A&M at 14. Another team with a new head coach, Mike Elko. LSU 13th. I know they lose Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, those just incredible weapons they had on offense. But Brian Kelly's a great offensive coach. I think they'll figure that side of the ball out. It comes down to their defense. Are they going to be good enough on defense to compete in the SEC week in and week out and try to make a college football playoff? At number 12, you got the Michigan Wolverines, the defending national champs, lose a lot off that team. But I'm telling you right now, they're still going to be one of the best defenses in college football. And when you got a great defense, you're going to be in every football game. So I still look for them to compete for the Big Ten championship. Florida State, number 11. Of course, they feel like they were snubbed of the CFP last year. Missouri Tigers, number 10 preseason in the FPI, according to ESPN. Another team that has a lot of hype entering this season. We'll see if Eli Drinkwitz can get it done or not. Tennessee at number 9. Josh Heupel, they got Nico in at quarterback. I'm not even going to try to say his last name. They have plenty of offensive firepower. You know they're going to be good on that side of the ball. They were better last year on defense. If they can kind of continue that trend, I think they're a sneaky good team here in 2024. Oklahoma Sooners at number 8, another team that I think probably did not live up to what they wanted to do last year under Brent Venables. And once again, I think this is a big season for Brent Venables. I think coming into the SEC, he has a chance to kind of make a statement, kind of put his mark on that Oklahoma football program. Let's see if he can get that done here in his first year in the SEC. Number 7 is Notre Dame, another team that should be pretty good. They get in Riley Leonard, the Duke quarterback transfer. They should be a really good team under Marcus Freeman. Then you got Penn State at number 6. That's usually kind of where they finish at year in and year out. We'll see how they do this year. I'm still not sold on their quarterback. I think he's good. I'm not sure he's good enough to carry them, past the powerhouses in the Big Ten. Like, I mean, now you bring in USC and UCLA. I'm not sure that Penn State is going to be good enough to beat Ohio State, beat Michigan on a consistent enough basis to win the Big Ten. And I'm not saying they won't make the CFP. I'm just saying I'm not sure they're good enough to win the big games. Alabama, number 5. This is about where I expected them to be. But look, they still have one of the most talented rosters in the country. I know they lose Isaiah Bond. I like what they brought in with Jeremy Bernard. Jalen Milroe's back at quarterback. I think they have one of the best running back rooms in the country. I think their offensive line is going to look significantly better than what people are thinking. Tyler Booker, Caden Proctor, Parker Brailsford, Jaden Roberts. Then you just got to worry about that right tackle spot. But I think outside of that right tackle, I think this offensive line has a chance to be really, really good for Alabama. We'll talk more about that, obviously, throughout the offseason. I like what they have on offense. I think they're going to be really good under Kalen DeBoer and Nick Sheridan on offense. It gets down to the defense. They lose a lot of talent there, especially in the back end, a lot of youth, a lot of inexperience there in the secondary. But you got Malachi Moore. You bring in Keon Sabb. You bring in the transfer corners and Damani Jackson and Deshaun Jones. So you do have a little more experience. It's just not in Tuscaloosa outside of Malachi Moore. So you're a little concerned about the back end. But you look there at the front 7, you got dudes everywhere. Jahad Campbell, Deontay Lawson. You got Jaheim Otis. You got Tim Smith, Tim Keenan. There's a lot of talent there in that front 7. I think that front 7 is going to be very impactful here for Alabama, and I'm interested. I cannot wait for the season. It's going to be so much fun to see this football team under Coach DeBoer and kind of how he has these guys ready to play when Western Kentucky rolls into town on August 31st. Number 4, you got the Ohio State Buckeyes. This is a team. Look, Ryan Day, this is a huge year for Ryan Day. I mean, you could almost go as far as just to say it's national championship or bust for Ryan Day with all the talent that he has there in Columbus. Brings in the transfer quarterback from Kansas State, Will Howard. You got the best running back duo in the country with Trevion Henderson, and you get Judkins from Ole Miss. My gosh, they're always good at receiver. They got to get it done this year. They got to get it done. Number 3, you got the Texas Longhorns, of course, a college football playoff team last year. You get Quinn Ewers back. You know Sark is going to have that offense rolling in Austin. Defensively, they should be pretty stout. They do lose a lot of the front 7 defenders that really were impactful for the Longhorns last season, but they should be one of the top teams in the country once again. So it'd be interesting to see if Sark can kind of keep that thing rolling there for the Longhorns. Number 2, the Oregon Ducks. Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks receiving a lot of preseason hype. A really good team. They're going to be right there competing for they're in the Big Ten. It's the Big Ten is going to be so interesting, just like the SEC. It's really those two conferences now. Um, I know Florida State and Clemson still in the ACC, but guys, I mean, I think the national championship winner is either going to be from the Big Ten or the SEC, and that's really not even a bold statement. And Oregon is among the teams that have the potential to make a good run in the college football playoff here this next season. And of course, number one is the Georgia Bulldogs. Uh, what can you say? They've won 2 out of the last 3 national championships. Kirby Smart has built one of the best programs in college football. They probably are the standard right now with Nick Saban retiring at Alabama. But look, they didn't get it done last year. They were defeated by, I would say, a team that was not as good as them in the SEC championship game in Alabama. Kirby Smart, I believe, was out coached in the SEC championship game, and Alabama made the plays there late in that game to win it. So it'll be interesting the type of mindset Georgia comes in with this year under Kirby Smart. They get Carson Beck back. You know they're going to be good on offense because Carson Beck's a really good quarterback. But what does it look like, without Ladd McConkey, without Brock Bowers at tight end? So there is some question marks for this Georgia football team on offense. And defensively, they're going to be sound. But are they going to be dominant? They were not dominant up front last year, and I think that was why they didn't win a championship. But I'm interested to see if they can kind of return to a more dominating play there along the front seven in Athens for Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs. All right, guys, I know that was a lot. I just kind of wanted to run down some of the things that Alabama football is related to for this 2024 college football season on this solo episode of our show. Jake's going to be back with me here probably later this week, and we'll do a little deeper dive into a more specific Alabama football podcast. But real quick, I want to touch on basketball because I haven't been with you since Mark Sears and Jaron Stevenson announced they were coming back for another year. My gosh, the roster in Tuscaloosa that Nate Oates has. I mean, I think it's the best roster Alabama basketball has ever had, and they're probably going to be preseason number 1. They probably should be. I'm not sure if I like that or not, but this is certainly exciting times for Alabama basketball fans coming off a Final Four appearance and now likely going to be preseason number 1 for college basketball. So what a job that Nate Oates has done in Tuscaloosa. We say that, I think, every time we get together, but excited about what he's built there in Tuscaloosa, and really looking forward to the college basketball season and, of course, the college football season as well. Hate that softball and baseball got put out in their postseason runs, but great job by Coach Rob Vaughn and Patrick Murphy. Just athletic programs there at the University of Alabama is second to none. Greg Byrne has an absolute powerhouse built in Tuscaloosa. So kudos to Greg Byrne as well. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Like I mentioned, if you're not already subscribed here on our YouTube channel, make sure you hit that sub button, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our content, and jump in the comment section, give us a roll tide, let us know where you're watching from and your thoughts on today's episode, and maybe some future content ideas for us as well. We'll be doing some live shows throughout the summer months too. We are part of the Believe Network. Head on over to betonline.ag. We are presented by betonline.ag. Please head over there. Use that promo code BELIEVE to get 50% off your first, a 50% bonus on your first deposit. Guys, we find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Follow us on all those social media platforms so we can interact with you guys more. Appreciate everybody watching. We'll see you real soon. But until then, roll tide.